This camera right here that you are watching me through is the best camera I can find. And I'm sure the best camera that you could find if you had looked really hard for content creators. This camera, by the way, if you haven't read the title or saw the thumbnail, is the Sony ZV-E1. And I've been shooting with this camera for the last 2 years, and I'm still yet to find a camera that could even come close to replacing it. It has shot all of my YouTube content. It has shot a vast majority of my Instagram content. It shot all of my Instagram educational content, my TikTok content. You get the idea. I love this camera. It's a do-it-all camera. And today I want to walk you through everything I love, everything I really love, everything I don't like, its strengths, its weaknesses, and if you should buy one, especially now that it is a few years old. All of that will be covered in today's video. So let's get started. So the Sony ZV-E1 is by far a video focused camera, but that doesn't mean it can't take photos. And that doesn't mean that it can't take good photos. Even though it has a 12 megapixel sensor that on paper wouldn't sound like it takes great photos, I'm just gonna let them speak for themselves. You let me know what you think. See, I love shooting photos with this camera. And while it doesn't have all the photography bells and whistles, you can clearly see that you can still shoot amazing shots with it. The autofocus is great, the colors are amazing, and the raw files are super flexible. Even cropping, sure, because you're shooting on a 12 megapixel sensor, it's not amazing, but it's also not impossible. Let's punch into 200% on a couple of these images, and once again, you let me know. Does it look good? Does it look bad? My opinion, they look great, especially if you're sharing them on social media and you're not blowing them up to be on a huge billboard somewhere. Now, all of these shots have been edited inside of Lightroom, and they've been edited using my AI editing system for Lightroom, which is at the moment, could be more when you're seeing this video, but it is 40 Lightroom tools that will revolutionize the way you edit your photos in Lightroom. If you don't have them yet, you are definitely missing out like crazy, so you can go and check them out in the first link in the description. They work flawlessly with the photos from the Sony ZV-E1, and to be honest with you, every single other photo from any other camera I've ever used. All in all though, the photos coming out of this camera are great. Should you get it as a serious photography camera that you want to go and shoot professional weddings with? Probably not. There are a few things that don't particularly line up very well when it comes to professional photography specs, but we'll get into those a little bit later in this video. But if you are shooting casually or semi-professionally for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, social media in general, this camera is going to be a no-brainer for you. And keep in mind, a little bit of a perk from a 12 megapixel sensor, the photo sizes aren't massive, which is great compared to like my Sony a7C Mark II, which has a 33 megapixel sensor. The photos are more than double, sometimes triple the size of the photos coming from my Sony ZV-E1. So less storage cost. It's nice. Moving on to the video. This is what this camera was really made for. Once again, because I'd probably prefer to show you rather than just tell you how good the video is, I'm gonna let it speak for itself. It shoots incredible, emphasis on incredible, 4K footage in 10-bit 422, which means you get a lot of flexibility when color grading and color correcting in post. Now, of course, this footage isn't raw footage, so if you shot something a little too dark or a little too bright, you should be fine, but you're not gonna be able to make like crazy big raw photo changes to your footage without it falling apart and looking pretty rubbish, but that's standard in video. With that being said, the S-Log3 color grades like a dream. I've pulled off some of my favorite color grades ever on the footage from this camera. Once again, I'm putting a load of these on screen now so you can see the capability of the footage coming out of this camera. But the cool thing is that even if you're not shooting in S-Log3, the colors coming out of this camera are great as well. They are so good, in fact, that I'm filming this video right now, not in S-Log3. This is straight out of camera, absolutely zero color grading, color correction, or anything on this footage. What you're seeing right now, all of the A-roll in this video is straight out of camera, no picture profiles, no styles, no LUTs, nothing. You also get 2 base ISOs. So you have the base ISO of 640 when you're shooting in S-Log3, and then you can go all the way up to ISO 12,800, and it pretty much resets back to almost zero noise, which is really, really powerful, especially when you're shooting in low light conditions. And the last video perk, especially for creators, that I want to touch on is the fact that it doesn't have a record limit, which is really, really good, except for the other little record limit that it sort of has when it starts to overheat a little bit, but I'll touch on that in just a bit. That's an interesting one. So you know what the photos look like, you know what the video looks like. Let's now talk about the perks of this camera specifically for content creators. The first thing I want to touch on, and it's really hard to go past it, is the size and weight of this camera, especially considering what you get inside this camera, which is a full frame sensor that is stabilized. It's kind of wild. Previous to shooting with the Sony ZV-E1, I was shooting with Canon. Specifically, I was shooting with the Canon R5C, and the Sony ZV-E1 compared to the Canon R5C, and yes, I know they're for completely different audiences and they serve completely different purposes, but it was crazy. I noticed this instantly. I could put this camera in my backpack and I would hardly notice it. It fits almost anywhere. It doesn't gain that much attention, especially when you're out and about shooting in public, which is really nice. And never once have I thought to myself, I'd like a smaller camera than this. I'm in love with the size and weight of this camera. The stabilization on this camera as well is really, really good. You get 3 different stabilization modes. You get normal stabilization, you get active stabilization, and then you get dynamic active stabilization. I shoot a lot of dynamic active stabilization video just because of how good it looks, and it requires me to use my warp stabilizer inside of Premiere Pro way less, which speeds up my entire editing workflow. And the fact that it's in this tiny package that the ZV-E1 comes in is super, super impressive from Sony. It's also really simple and easy to use. There are very few buttons and dials on this camera in general. Now, for more professional and advanced filmmakers, this is a downside 100%. But for a content creator that's a bit more run and gun, that doesn't need all the flashy dials and buttons and things to do and things that are just going to trip them up, this is a really, really nice, subtle sort of indirect perk. And of course, it's hard to talk about this camera without mentioning the battery life as well, which is incredibly good. I can easily get between 1 hour and 45 minutes of runtime shooting 4K 25 or 4K 30 FPS footage on my camera when I'm sitting here in the studio, which is really, really nice. It means I'm charging my batteries less, swapping my batteries less, and I don't have to think about my battery life as much, especially compared to my old Canon R5C. I don't miss those days. Now, I don't want to sit here and pretend that this camera is perfect because it definitely isn't. There are a few things that I wish it had or I wish it did differently. The first one is a deeper grip. I know that you can get an additional grip sort of mount on the front of this camera, which looks interesting, but I have no interest in adding any size or weight to this camera. And by not adding size or weight to this camera, I don't mean I don't want a bigger grip, but I'm going to complain that it has a smaller grip. No, I just wish it had a bit more of a deeper grip. That's it. For me, it's not a huge game changer, as a lot of the time this camera is set up on a tripod shooting these kinds of videos. So I'm not holding the camera all that often when I'm using it. But for when I am out and about, run and gun, shooting B-roll, whatever the case, it would be nice just to have a little bit of a deeper grip, but it's not a deal breaker at all. Now, I've already mentioned it just a little bit, but the overheating is an interesting one. I've got the stats right here. I find that the Sony ZV-E1, for me, only overheats when I'm shooting in 4K 30 FPS for more than 1.5 hours straight. That's the only time I experience it. And I've always got my air conditioning set to 21.5 degrees, so hopefully the room is somewhat close to that temperature level. Aside from this exact scenario, I personally haven't experienced any other overheating issues on the Sony ZV-E1. And honestly, once I've been filming, sitting here for an hour and a half anyway, I'm probably due a little bit of a break and a bit of a drink. So what I do is I turn my camera off, I take the battery out, I open up the SD card door, and I just kind of hopefully let the camera cool down a little bit. And then once I pop the battery back in, after about 5 to 10 minutes, it's ready to go. This camera also only has one SD card slot. Now, that might not be a problem for you if you've never experienced shooting with a camera that has 2 SD card slots. I love shooting with 2 SD cards in my camera. One, it means I'll never or very rarely ever leave an SD card home, get out on a shoot and not have an SD card in my camera. And it means, especially when I'm shooting longer form videos like this, if I accidentally roll over the amount of storage I have on one SD card slot, it would be nice if I had a second one in my camera and it just flicked over to the next card and kept recording. I was able to do that on my Canon R6 and my Canon R5C. And of course you can do this on other Sony bodies, but for the ZV-E1, it doesn't have 2 SD card slots. And then the last thing I kind of want to nitpick on this camera just a little bit about is the fact that it doesn't have a viewfinder. Now, I get it. It's a really small body, so they've sort of got to make a few decisions on what this camera does and doesn't have, otherwise it's just going to get bigger. But missing a viewfinder is something that I didn't really expect to miss all that much. But when you're out and about shooting, really bright conditions, and the back screen on this camera is good, but it's not amazing, you sort of start to miss it pretty quickly. Like the fact that I can't put the camera up to my eyes and then get a real nice blackout of exactly what is in my frame is something that I wish this camera had, but once again, like I mentioned, it would probably just add to the size and bulk, and I really like the size of this camera, so it's something that I'm willing to sacrifice. So, should you buy this camera? Well, that is a really good question. And I think you should if you are looking to invest in your content creation game. If you've been shooting for a little while now and things are maybe starting to roll, or you really want to make the investment into yourself and into your business, into your career, hopefully, then I think the Sony ZV-E1 is the best content creation camera that you can buy. Do I think there'll be an update soon? Probably. This camera is going on 3 years old now. It's about to be there pretty soon. So I would assume maybe in the next year or so, we might see an update. But then again, the Sony a7S III took so many years to come out from when the Sony a7S II was released, so it's really hard to know what Sony will do. My personal recommendation would be to try and pick up a Sony ZV-E1 used instead of buying it brand new to sort of offset the brand new retail cost that you would pay, just in case there is a Sony ZV-E1 2 or a ZV-E2 on the horizon. Anyway, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. Just a quick reminder, if you want to go ahead and check out my AI editing system for Lightroom to completely change the way you edit photos, believe me, it's been game-changing. I've loved it, and over 2,000 other people have loved it as well. You can check it out in the first link in the description. And if you want to continue learning about photo editing, video, and video editing, you can check out this video right here, and I'll see you over there.